Consensus Network.
I wanted to share with those people that were like myself, that were in the altcoin space, of why Bitcoin matters. I haven't read a lot of books that talk about the altcoin space. And so the book chronicles, here's what is interesting about the altcoin space, but here's ultimately why that stuff fails or why that stuff falls on its face. One of the biggest strokes of genius I think Matteo had when he was creating the app was creating a paywall. I would have never done that because I would have thought, wow, we're creating a social network. We need as many users as possible because then that will make more users come in. Matteo from the very beginning had this approach of quality over quantity. And that's just so in line with the Bitcoin ethos. It's like, I don't care if I have 1 million connections or not. I want a few really high quality, high signal connections. But guess what? When that happens, when you create a few high quality connections, people see that and they want to be a part of that. And it actually grows and grows. And so we're seeing a pretty nice little streak of growth right now because people are connecting through the app.
Welcome back to the Freedom Footprint Show, a Bitcoin philosophy show with Knut Svanholm and me, Luke the Pseudofinn. Today, we're joined by Brian DeMint, author of Bitcoin Evangelism and Chief Marketing Officer at Orange Pill App. In today's episode, we dig more into how Orange Pill App is connecting Bitcoiners around the world, we discuss Bitcoin's marketing problem, and we hear about how Brian is spreading the Bitcoin message to no-coiners and altcoiners through his book, Bitcoin Evangelism. Before we dive in, we'd like to quickly remind you that the best way to support the show is to send us a boost or stream us some sats using a value-for-value podcasting app such as Fountain. If you're listening to this show as a podcast, check out Fountain if you haven't already. You can earn sats from listening to podcasts, and you can support your favorite shows through value for value. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a weekly episode. And finally, we want to thank today's sponsors, Wasabi Wallet, Orange Pill App, and BitcoinBook.shop. All their information is in the description. We'll be talking a little bit more about them later. And now, without further ado, here's Brian DeMint on the Freedom Footprint Show. Okay, welcome back to the Freedom Footprint Show. Brian, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited. This is long awaited. I've honestly been excited about this one for a long time. We get to do a lot with the book tour and stuff, but there's certain shows that you just, certain people you look forward to hanging out with. And you and I have gotten to do, we did a spaces or a live broadcast for something else, but yeah, looking forward to kind of being a little bit more focused attention today. That was a bigger group last time. So.
Yeah, we've done a bunch of spaces together at this point, right? The OPA spaces where you usually host the Orange Pill App Twitter spaces, and it's always good fun to be in those. I don't know how you manage to find all those nice guests. I mean,
you know what? It's been nice because Orange Pill App's starting to get a little bit of its own reputation, and so I found that as long as I don't reach out to them as myself, they don't care when I reach out. But when Orange Pill App reaches out, they think that that's interesting because I think plenty of people have been sharing their experiences about meeting people on the Orange Pill App. There was a couple that had a meetup the other night, and so I think people are hearing these organic stories about Orange Pill App, and it's kind of trickling up to all sorts of different Bitcoiners, and so people are fascinated about what's going on, and that just gives us access to plenty of interesting people.
Yeah, that's sort of what you do too. Like Luke, you reach out to people as the Freedom Footprint Show, and not as the Canadian Finn, I guess.
Well, at least I can say I'm, the co-host and producer of Knut Svanholm show. Well, it always helps when I name drop, but yeah.
A nice healthy good name drop every once in a while never hurt anybody.
Knut's a pretty good name drop, definitely. Brian, can you give us just like an intro on you, a TLDR, or like we like to say here, an R on yourself?
An R. I'll give you the R. So the TL, I don't think I've ever done anything that's TLDR. I always give the it's going to be too long. You're not going to want to read this. So, but anyways, I've been in the Bitcoin space. I don't know. It's such a weird thing to say. But for about 10 years, I think 2013, I started studying it. So I've been an entrepreneur since 2008. And, there was these entrepreneurs, guys that I looked up to that had bought a little bit of Bitcoin. And so I started studying Bitcoin, honestly, as a skeptic, trying to tell them why they were idiots. It's like, I really respect you guys, but why are you guys buying this funny money? And so, of course, when you peel that onion back, and if you truthfully and, if you're rationally looking at these things, it tends to be very eye-opening. I'd never asked the question, what is money? I never asked the question of how does our system work? How is currency created? I mean, we've all been through that process, and that was how that process unfolded for me, was kind of coming at it from a skeptical lens. So then, a little shortly after, started buying Bitcoin. I wish somebody had told me about dollar cost averaging. I was pretty broke at the time because all my money was sunk into building my business. And so, wish I would have had plenty more funds to be able to buy and dollar cost average at the time, but it just trickled in. And went through my altcoin phase in that 2016-ish time. Worked on an altcoin project. Was surrounded by guys that genuinely had good motives. So it wasn't like an outright scam on that front, but it was a I guess you could call it a centralized group of people that didn't fully understand the big to why Bitcoin mattered in decentralization. And so we could dive into some of the things that I got to experience through being in the marketing role for a blockchain project. That was very eye-opening, and it leads to very compelling reasons of coming back to Bitcoin only. So my bell curve arc, or whatever you want to call it, was Bitcoin only, altcoin phase, and back here about 2019, kind of landed back in the Bitcoin only space. And so then wrote a book kind of to talk about some of my experience. I wanted to share, it's called Bitcoin Evangelism. I wanted to share with those people that were like myself, that were in the altcoin space, of why Bitcoin matters. I haven't read a lot of books that are Bitcoin only books that talk about the altcoin space. I think one of the things I was getting from my altcoin friends was that Bitcoiners just don't understand the altcoin space. Therefore, we were people that bought Bitcoin a long time ago. And so we're just hoping that Bitcoin works. And that was the only reason that we were pro Bitcoin or Bitcoin only. And so the book chronicles, here's what is interesting about the altcoin space, but here's ultimately why that stuff fails, or why that stuff falls on its face. So it takes a very soft approach to it, but ultimately leads the reader back to a Bitcoin only approach. So I guess the hope with the book is, if somebody's going to go through it, as opposed to doing what I did and going through your Bitcoin phase, your altcoin phase, and then coming back to Bitcoin, hopefully you could read this book and then experience that entire process before having ever gone through your altcoin phase. And then that in the process of doing my book tour and just networking and meeting people, I got to get in touch with Orange Pill app, and I just signed up for Orange Pill app as a user. When they launched at Pacific Bitcoin, Mateo just gave me the pitch, and I was sold on the idea. I said, I believe that this is a critical piece of Bitcoin's future. I think that we need something like this in order to facilitate this social layer for Bitcoin. And so that's what got me involved in the Orange Pill app side of things.
Yeah, and the Orange Pill app is way more than just the app. Like, now this sounds like a shameless shill here, but having been an advisor for the Orange Pill app for a while now, and seen what it can do and how it brings people together, it's truly remarkable. And also, like how it brings Bitcoin company people together, and all the synergies with Fountain app, for instance, which we had a spaces with the other day, and all sorts of collaborations, not least with the Consensus Network in my book. So I know I'm biased saying this, but these are not the only companies and not the only people in this. It's you can truly see the power of this thing. It's bringing all sorts of Bitcoiners together, and it's very nice. And I think you're a very good spokesperson for the Orange Pill app. I mean, it's good to have a clear voice instead of just Matteo going, you need to download the app. I mean, I love Matteo and everything he does, but it's good that you're in the space too, and such a good host of all of these spaces and whatnot, and whatever's coming down the pipe for Orange Pill app. And I'm looking forward to see where we can take this thing and what it can do.
Yeah, no, I think that it's really exciting to be a part of this team. I mean, that honestly was a big part of, aside from just seeing the vision of what Orange Pill app could be, Matteo had assembled a pretty amazing group of advisors with you and Daniel Prince and Sessions and all these guys. So for him, the pitch to me was, hey, do you want to come work with Orange Pill app? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I get to work with these guys and do a monthly meeting and talk to some of these people that I get to, pick their brains. And here being an upstart Bitcoin author, and I get to talk to Knut about, I mean, again, you get your books in the background here. It's like, these are books that I've read myself and that I found inspiration in. So that there was a lot of value add to me. But I'd say one of the coolest things, like you said, that we get to work with these other Bitcoin companies that are building in the space. And I found myself, even though I've always understood from an early time of being in Bitcoin that I need to lower my time preference. When you build in Bitcoin, when you're creating something in Bitcoin and working in that space, you lower your time preference even more. I found that I was finding out from other people in conversation that the Bitcoin price was up on a certain day. And it's like, wow, I don't check the Bitcoin price, 40 times a day like I used to, because I've been so focused on just pushing the social layer of Bitcoin. Like, how do we make more connections? Those were the metrics that I started, I guess, finding excitement in my day. Is like, how many books did I sell? Okay, great. That means that there's X amount of more people that are potentially getting Orange Pill today. How many more people signed up for Orange Pill app? That's great, because there's that many more social connections. Those were the metrics that I was constantly refreshing on my phone rather than the Bitcoin price. And so it's been very refreshing talking to other people in the space like you. You're constantly talking about how to lower our time preference. I mean, if this thing takes 1,000 generations, we should consider that a success. And that's the mindset that I think is very important to have. And I'm getting a lot of that from working with Fountain and working with Geyser Fund. These companies aren't talking about what we're going to do today or tomorrow. They're talking about what we're going to build for the next 10 years. And let's have a longer time horizon that way. So it's been very helpful for me in a pragmatic sense.
Another thing, just to give a shout out that I mentioned to BTC Map and Nathan, who's building this wonderful map of wherever the Bitcoin retailers and the Bitcoin ATMs and whatever are. There's been a whole bunch of such services in the past, but none of them have been very easily integrated into other websites and other apps. And BTC Map is working closely with Orange Pill apps. So you can get all the Bitcoin locations, so to speak, directly in the app. So it feels like an app that's putting it all together, laying the final piece of the puzzle in a way.
Well, yeah. And about 20 minutes ago, I just got off a phone call with Texas Slim. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he runs the Beef Initiative. And so we're partnering with them in some capacity. So we're obviously promoting their events through the app. We're not promoting, we're just posting them through the app, and then they can promote them. We're going to, obviously retweet and share those events. But I went out to the Georgia Beef Initiative last year, and that was great. I mean, it's very in line with what we're trying to do through Orange Pill app, is facilitating in real life connections. And so they're getting consumers to go and shake. That's their whole, catchphrase is shake a rancher's hand. Go and meet the rancher, go and meet the guy that's growing your food or harvesting or whatever it is, and actually look them in the eye, shake their hand, and you have this connection. That's going to be much more difficult for any encroachment of tyranny or legislation to break. When you've made a personal connection, it's much more difficult to shut that down, rather than if you have simply an online connection, and then all they need, all the bad guys need to do is shut down their online store or, pause their store for some reason, then you no longer have a connection. But if there's a street that I can take to go to my rancher and pick up my food, that's a much more difficult bond to break. And so those are some of the partnerships we're working on right now with Orange Pill app. And it's really cool to see somebody like Texas Slim, who I've met before, but I said, how familiar are you with the Orange Pill app? He said, oh my gosh, I was out in Australia and we were talking about that at the Australian Bitcoin conference. And, people are getting really excited about this tool that we have at our disposal to connect with people. People see the value of the in real life connection. One of the biggest strokes of genius I think Matteo had when he was creating the app was creating a paywall. Like, I would have never had the foresight if I was creating a social network to have a paywall. For those that don't know, the app costs $3 a month, but it's the best $3 you'll ever spend because it filters out any bots, noise, or any of that kind of stuff. And I would have never done that because I would have thought, wow, we're creating a social network. We need as many users as possible because then that will make more users come in. Matteo, from the very beginning, had this approach of quality over quantity. And that's just so in line with the Bitcoin ethos. It's like, I don't care if I have 1 million connections or not. I want a few really high quality, high signal connections. But guess what? When that happens, when you create a few high quality connections, people see that and they want to be a part of that. And it actually grows and grows. And so we're seeing a pretty nice little streak of growth right now because people are connecting through the app. I was out at the Swan Salon at a few weeks ago, and they had it was this really posh house where Swan hosts their private event for their high net worth investor people or whatever. And I was talking to a guy, JD from Cypherpunk Films, and he had his friend there, and I said, oh hey, and he said, this is my friend Derek. I'm like, oh great, how'd you guys meet? He goes, we met on Orange Pill app an hour before this event. I had a +1 ticket. And I didn't have any Bitcoiners that wanted to come with me. So I went into Orange Pill app and found this guy that lives kind of in my neighborhood. And I just messaged him and said, hey, do you want to come to this event? And I said, oh, you trusted that? Why did you feel so confident that you could go pick up a stranger in your car? You just pulled up out in front of his house. You DM'd him and said, hey, I'm here. What made you feel comfortable with that interaction? He goes, because I knew they were a Bitcoiner. He goes that it created this, there was this curation process that happened where I had no problem picking up this dude and taking him to this event right when I met him because we've been able to interact within the Bitcoin ecosystem. So it's very interesting seeing how these real life connections are playing out that are manifesting through a social network. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this before. I think that this is going to be a use case that's talked about in textbooks for years to come. And I can say that because I didn't create the app, so I don't get to take any of the credit for it. But I think that the business textbooks of the future will write about this is like, how do you start a social network with a paywall? It could only happen in the Bitcoin ecosystem, because if you try to start TikTok with a paywall, that demographic doesn't understand value for value, right? But Bitcoiners inherently understand value for value and why it's worth paying for something. To get something more out of it. So it's been very interesting to have a front row seat to this.
Yeah, fascinating. It's valuable. Value is substituting attention for attention, I guess, or attention for ad revenue. Yeah, and it's beautiful. Absolutely. Yeah, the Swan event, was that the one in Miami or another event?
So this was one in Southern California. They do monthly meetups and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, because I attended some Swan party in Miami. This, by the way, this is recorded between the Miami conference and the Prague conference, which is next week. So me and Luke will be in Prague and try to do some stuff there. But I guess this episode will be released after Prague, so there's no use in chilling that, right, Luke?
We're actually really trying to build up a big backlog because we've got a busy summer. But But Prague's going to be really cool. I mean, Brian and I think a lot of the American Bitcoiners in general, I think you should try and make it out to the European conferences if you can. It's a different vibe. I think. Have you been out to any of the European events?
No, I've actually never been to Europe before. So sorry, I feel kind of ashamed of that.
You should grab a ticket to Honey Badger. Come see it there. That's a pure signal event.
Really?
Yeah. Riga in the beginning of September. You should look into that. It's one of our favorite conferences.
We'll be there.
If not our favorite conference.
It's where we met first time.
And it's sort of where my Bitcoiner career, quote unquote, took off. I brought 50 books in my hand luggage in 2019 to Riga. And that's where it all started.
Why do you think those European events are like so high signal? You could argue that in the US that's maybe not the case. It depends on the event. But yeah, why?
I think the American culture is much more, and I guess especially after 1971, I should add that, but it's a much more, it revolves around advertisement a lot. And that's not the case in Europe to the same extent. So it's this, in a way, fiat-y mindset where you need to move fast and break things and just push your products as much as you can, and the big strobe lights and banners and stuff everywhere. You need to make as much noise as possible to get people's attention. And Europe is a little different. I guess also in the US, like Bitcoin Miami is the biggest conference, and it's sort of also, it claims to be a Bitcoin only conference, but it's really a Bitcoin and a couple of shitcoins conference. It's very inclusive like that. And that's all nice and friendly, but it keeps the noise louder in relative to the signal. And I think in Europe that the conferences are more separate. So there are Bitcoin only conferences and then the crypto, blockchain, whatever shit conferences on the side. Maybe that's just me being ignorant about other American conferences. I don't know how many mixed coin conferences there are. I hear BitBlock Boom is quite high signal, and also, of course, the Pacific Bitcoin that's higher in terms of Bitcoiner to shitcoiner ratio during the conference.
Yeah.
I mean, then again, Miami is great because the Miami conference is great because of all the side events as well. It creates since it's so big, it creates these sub communities around the conference. I remember when I landed in Miami, the first thing I did was I bumped into Andy Edstrom, and then we waited for his luggage for a while, and I just took a cab straight to this Kill Your Idol rock venue where I was doing the Satoshi Nakamoto thing. So I just gave my luggage to Muzz, and he said, "Knut, you need to go up on stage." And I went up on stage and grabbed a guitar or a bass or something and played a couple of songs. And when I finished playing a couple of songs, I went out on the street again, and there was my luggage under a table on the street. So like, we need to put this somewhere. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And so, but that event was pretty successful. So we're for some odd reason, because I thought we played all the wrong notes and none of the right notes, but people seem to have enjoyed it anyway. So we're doing it again in Prague now.
That's cool.
And that's really So looking forward to that a lot with a slightly different band, but
Well, I was in the audience. I was in the audience for that. That was such a boss move, man. It's like, where's Knut? Oh, I heard his flight's just getting in. Okay, cool. And then there's Knut, and he just walks up on stage and starts just rocking out. It's like, this is how he says hi. He just comes up on stage and just starts killing it on the guitar. So no, man, that was really cool.
No, but I'm living the meme and the dream at the same time here. I'm doing all the things that I wish I was doing when I was 26, and now I'm 46, and it's actually happening. To me, it's just a dream come true to be able to go to Miami and go straight to rock venue and play a couple of riffs.
That was so cool.
Yeah, it's great. About your book, Bitcoin Evangelism, you say that it's for shitcoiners.
Yeah.
Is that the target audience for it, or like so?
Yeah, I mean, Brian, that Knut uses a different word than you to refer to them.
I'm not ashamed of that. I'm going to call it shitcoiners.
Yeah, you can call it that. I have no problem. I just don't like cuss. I don't know what it is. I'm not a swearer. It just was raised that way. So I just say altcoin, but I used it in select occasions. But anyways, yeah, I mean, so the whole concept of evangelism, it harkens back to Christian evangelism. So it was like Christian evangelism, whether you find merit in that or not, it was one of the most successful movements of all time. And it was because they had a really good formulated message for two groups of people, right? There was the atheist, and then there was the pagan. So there was the person that didn't believe, And then there was the person that believed in a higher power or deity, but they believed in, some variation of God or gods or whatever. And it's like, that's kind of what we have here in the Bitcoin space. We have the no coiner, we have the skeptic. And so there needs to be an argument formulated for them. And then we have the altcoin pagans, that believe in, they believe in blockchain, but they believe in some variation, or they believe that, decentralization doesn't matter, but what we really need is speed and scalability and those sorts of things. So being able to speak to those two types of people, I think is powerful. And I think that if we want the Bitcoin community, maybe the lowest hanging fruit for bringing Bitcoiners or increasing the amount of Bitcoiners in the world is just orange pilling the crypto community, because they're people that are fascinated by maybe a change in a paradigm shift in terms of money or value transfer. Some of these people are just in it to get rich quick, and so if that's all they care about, then yeah, I guess the merits of Bitcoin aren't necessarily going to appeal to them, because we don't take much of an approach of talking about this is why Bitcoin's going to go to the moon. And so maybe that's the only thing that they're on, crypto Twitter for. But if they do care about a fundamental change in the way that value is transferred, I've talked to plenty of friends of mine that are really into Solana because they really are intrigued by the movement of DeFi. All right, well, let's break that down and fully understand what that means. And then most of the guys that I know that are on Solana, they don't understand that it's been 51% attacked multiple times. And so they don't realize how vulnerable their money or their funds are. And so just walking through that process is really important. And then even sharing some of my experiences from when I was the marketing guy for a blockchain project. Like I was saying earlier, there's some experiences in there that were pretty eye-opening. I mean, so kind of like how I'm in my role in marketing right now for Orange Pill app. I was in that similar role for this blockchain project called Athenium, and it was education, decentralizing education, right? Like that's what blockchain projects. You take lemonade stands, and we're going to decentralize lemonade stands or whatever XYZ. So that was kind of our mission at the time, right? Well, you can imagine every day that I would wake up, I would have 10 DMs in my inbox from another blockchain project saying, hey, we're XYZ coin. Let's announce a partnership with you guys, and then we'll pump it. And they were literally just messages about pumping and dumping and scamming their groups of people. So I think it's really important for people to understand that when they're buying into these projects, the people that you're buying these coins from are actively pursuing a scam of your money. They're actively trying to siphon off your money. And I think that most people don't understand that humans would do that to one another. It's crazy. And to us, it's obvious, right? We know that there's scammers out there, but most people think that the blockchain space is like this altruistic playground of people being, singing, sunshine and rainbows and lollipops and all that kind of stuff. And so the naivety in that space is pretty high. And so just even sharing some of those stories about overt scams is really powerful. But one of the most eye-opening things that I saw, after I'd been asked 1,000 times to try and pump and dump our coin, which we never did. We never did on our side of it. We actually had people that weren't of that mindset. I actually went to one of the exchanges that we had our coin listed on. It was one of those small exchanges, CPayTex, or one of the exchanges that's probably blown up by now. But it was late one night, and there was about $200 worth of our coin on this exchange. We had our coin was AEM was the name of the coin, and I bought all $200 worth of the coin. I said, I wonder what happens if I buy up all the liquidity of this coin, and now there's no liquidity on the market. What happened was I bought the $200 worth of the coin. They were all 2 cents per coin. And then what I did was I sold the next coin to myself. So wash traded it to myself. I didn't even have to log in and go into a different account. I was able to create a sell order and then buy it through my exact same account. And I sold the next coin to myself for $1. So I 50x the price of the coin in one sell by selling it to myself. And I said, okay, that's interesting. At 50x the price on this one exchange, right? That was it. No. I went to CoinGecko. I went to CoinMarketCap, and our coin went from number 1,300 in the world to number 400 in the world in one sell for $1. Our market cap increased by $5 million. According to these websites, it aggregated across the entire internet, and it told everybody that the new price of this coin is now $1 because I sold one coin to myself for $1. So the market increased by $5 million by the sale. And I know this because I saw it. It was me. I did it myself. The market increased by $5 million because of the sale of a $1 coin. I sold it back. I created equilibrium in the market. I just did that as an experiment, and I put it back to where it was. The next day I resigned and I focused on Bitcoin only education. I said, this is way too, I had no idea. I knew that there might be problems in the market. I had no idea it was that fickle of a market that $5 million could move off of a $1 transaction.
Yeah, but this is why Bitcoin dominance index is such a bullshit metric, because all of the other ones, like the way they calculate the market cap is just how you described it. Like they sell one coin for $1 and then they issue 1 billion coins, and all of a sudden you have $1 billion market cap. And it's all bullshit. It's not because they actually sold $1 billion at all. They sold $1, and that's it.
Yeah.
And more often than not to themselves in one way or another. And I get that you've been working with a lot of sincere people in the altcoin space, and I think that a huge chunk of the people working with altcoins, for lack of a better word, or there is a better word, but anyway,
you can say it. I'm not offended by hearing it.
No, but I don't want to offend them. It's that there's always an asshole on top, for lack of a better word. With all of these projects, there's always someone who knows what's going on, and that person, because they must have, at some point stumbled upon Bitcoin. To be in the altcoin space, quote unquote altcoin space at all, you need to know about Bitcoin. Like you need to at least have heard of Bitcoin. And if you've done the tiniest amount of research, you realize that there can be only one that doesn't really have anyone on top. And furthermore, the decentralization part, as you say, they want to decentralize shoes and hairdresser education and whatever. Decentralization in Bitcoin is an unfortunate means to a greater end and nothing more. It is unfortunate that we need decentralization, because the only reason we do is because we can't trust one another with money or with a money printer. It has never worked in history. The guy with the money printer can never resist the temptation to press the copy button. And that is the problem with all money throughout history, and or with all currencies throughout history. So that's the problem we're trying to solve through by using decentralization. But what we want to get to is sound money that is censorship resistant, and no one can do anything about, and no one can take away from you by force very easily, because they cannot know how much you have. And that is the greater end. And it has nothing to do with decentralization. It has everything to do with markets and meritocracies and, fairness, truth, all of this stuff. So, this was in our conversation with Alexander Bard as well, Luke, how Bitcoin, because speaking of evangelism, excuse me for going on a little rant here, Brian, but I get some nice ideas here. Like so some people view Bitcoin as a religion, and that's all fine. And some people view it as a cult, and that's also fine. I find it more to be that what we're living in now is the cult, because what we're living in now requires belief, and Bitcoin doesn't really require belief. It's very rigid, and it's all about the logos, and the logos being that it's all ones and zeros, and it's all communication, and you can look up every step of it, and you don't have to trust anyone really if you do your homework in all these little sub caverns of the rabbit hole. So in that sense, I view it as financial atheism, as I wrote in my first book. Like that's another angle on this, that we're the ones breaking out of a cult, not the ones in a cult. However, that's sort of hard to promote to when 99% of the population is still in the cult. So maybe it's better to take the other angle. Split feelings about that. But in that sense, I feel that Bitcoin is using this ultimate logos to create the pathos and the mythos, which is the other two aspects of the human psyche. So we get to morality and spirituality through having perfect logic. So we're using logic to create the other two. And that's what I find so wonderful about it. One of the aspects of it, because it creates something out of nothing, for lack of a better phrase. It creates, when you have truth in the base layer of just like your story with the guy that picked up a newfound friend by Orange Pill app to the Swan party, when you have truth in the base layer of who we are, then it's much easier to trust other people. Because, if they're a true Bitcoiner, they have good intentions. They don't have these shitcoin intentions. So that's what I find the duality of that, having this absolute truth in the base layer but that you can verify every step of the base layer, that this adversarial thinking in the base layer that enables this truth layer, which enables trust between people on the other side of the coin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in praxeology, you talk a lot about axioms and things that that are apparent, right? That can lead to human action. I was thinking about this on the plane ride home is how there's a tremendous amount of centralization. When I was sitting on the plane, I'm like, there's a tremendous amount of centralization in this plane. There's 100 of us on the plane. There's 2 pilots in the front. Why do I actually trust this centralization right here? Because I was just at a conference where all we talked about was decentralization. Why does this work in this case that 100 people are trusting too? It's because there's aligned incentives, right? And so my human action, I can get on a plane and be comfortable in that interaction because I believe that those pilots want to get home to their families in the same way that I want to get home to my family. But as soon as incentives become disaligned, then centralization and power no longer works, right? And so across an economy, across especially the globe, we've never really had a good way to align incentives, and until something like Bitcoin, where we can verify every process, every step of the transaction. We don't have to trust, we can verify. So I no longer have to trust that the pilot wants to get home to his family. I no longer have to trust that the central banker has my best interest in mind. I can just verify that the greedy miner that's trying to mine Bitcoin because he wants to enrich himself, I can trust in the fact that, well, while he's enriching himself by mining, he's securing my Bitcoin, and therefore I'm benefiting from that interaction. The incentives become aligned through self-motivation in the same way that the pilot, his self-motivation to get home, it aligns with my self-motivation to get home. And so I think that Bitcoin's found a way, and that's probably the best part of the revolution, is that it was the first time that humanity found a way for the monetary system to align incentives with people that have completely different motivations. And so that's I think that's fascinating. In terms of how you're talking about the logos leading to the spiritual side.
It's sort of what money is supposed to do, but has never been able to do because money has always been corrupted. So like with the airplane and the airline and the airport and everyone involved, the thing we trust is the division of labor, because we trust the pilots to drive the plane, we trust the CEO of the airline company to run the company, and we trust the barista in the airport to make our coffee and so on. And that's beautiful. It's the division of labor. However, if that mechanism gets distorted by crappy money and doesn't function anymore, then we have to resort to trust the pilot not wanting to kill himself. Like here, then again, the pilot has to trust the fuel guy to have really have topped up the plane so that we can get to our destinations and stuff. But the more fiat gets corrupted, the harder it will become to trust the pilot to do his job for the proper reasons, and the more we have to trust him to just not crash the plane because he has an incentive to survive.
Yeah. That's the doom and gloom motive versus the market motive. I like yours. Yours is a bit more optimistic. The division of labor is much more compelling than that. I just don't want to die.
Yeah, exactly. But fiat makes us believe in a way that everyone is just in it for the I just don't want to die thing and are willing to do whatever for money. And on the Bitcoin standard, that is not necessary anymore, because once you're above a certain threshold, nobody knows what that threshold is, by the way, but you can be sure that if you just don't spend it all, it will provide you with all the security you need for the future, making each human being a much calmer, much more, at ease person that is just better to interact with, as we know.
Yeah, I agree.
Today's show is brought to you by our sponsors. First up, Orange Pill app. Stack friends who stack sats, meet like-minded Bitcoiners near you, and help speed up hyper-Bitcoinization with Orange Pill app. Bitcoin isn't an online-only phenomenon, and Orange Pill app helps facilitate the social layer, connecting Bitcoiners in their local area. It maintains your privacy through the whole process, and since you have to pay to access the app, you know that everyone there cares about Bitcoin and is high signal. A great new feature is events. You can create events and meetups right from the Orange Pill app and help build your local community while maintaining the Bitcoin-only signal. Orange Pill app is available on iOS and Android. Download now. Next up, Wasabi Wallet, an open-source, non-custodial desktop wallet that is trustless, easy to use, and affordable. It has CoinJoin built in to facilitate your privacy. Every Bitcoin transaction leaves a clear footprint, but with Wasabi, you can make sure that others can't track your steps and threaten your sovereignty. Just send your coins to Wasabi Wallet, wait, and your coins will be private on the other end. It's open source, trustless by design, and non-custodial. You have full control over your keys. Check it out now at wasabiwallet.io.
Right, I'd like to hear a little bit more about, since you have a background in marketing. I guess I've kind of got two questions. I'll start with the first one. So how did you get into marketing? How did that turn into the role that you tend to have these days?
Well, in college, I didn't study marketing. I studied something that Knut would call a fake science of, I studied psychology. I wouldn't
say that.
Having studied psychology and gotten a degree in human behavioral science, I think that it's one of those things where perhaps I would have done something different in hindsight if I'd known the conclusion of it. But it did grant some, or it did lend itself to the field of marketing. So after college, I actually went in and started. My wife and I started a business. We've been running it for the last 14 years. We do a light therapy. We have a small chain of light therapy studios. So we do infrared sauna, red light therapy. I don't know. These things are becoming popular now. But when we started, they certainly weren't popular. We even do, like vitamin D sunbeds. There's people that, believe it or not, even in Southern California, don't get sunshine. And so their doctors have them come in and get sunshine. So it was this, I think I really was able to sharpen my teeth a bit, in a field and starting a business that was kind of this holistic type of business where people were treating aches and pains, people that were looking to get off their prescription meds and maybe treat their arthritis through infrared sauna. How do you, when the paradigm of society is you have a pain and you take a pill, it's really hard to unwind some of that thinking. And so here, instead of taking the pill, it's going to make you feel good in about 5 minutes. Here, let's do this therapy that's going to take you a month to start feeling good. And it's going to take a month for you to kill your inflammation. But I promise you, in the end, you might not ever need that pill again, because we might not cure, but we might treat the underlying cause of your problem and fix it in the long term. So from even when I was still in my fiat mindset, when I was in, pre-Bitcoin, I was marketing a business that had low time preference. And so I've just been programmed with this idea that if something is true, then we just continue to champion it and talk about its merits, because there will always be a portion of the population that's interested in that. People are drawn to truth. There's people that are actively trying to suppress truth, but even just like in psychology, we know all the time, the things that we're trying to suppress are often the things that we're wrestling with the most, right? So our culture is in this state of suppressing truth, but I think it's because young people or the TikTok generation, they're trying to suppress truth so much because it weighs on them so heavily. So I think that in the end, marketing and championing these things, I don't think there's any secret sauce to this. It's the same if we're promoting Bitcoin. It's the same if we're promoting holistic treatments of to treat, your vitamin D deficiency. All of these things are kind of the same way. Is this stuff works if you stay the course. If you're looking at a short-term fix, this isn't for you. But if you're looking for a long-term remedy, then this is the way you want to go. And so just being honest and tipping your cards, the greatest piece of business advice that I think I ever give to people is don't hold your cards close to your vest. In business negotiations or whatever I've done in the past, when I just lay everything out and I tell somebody in a business negotiation what I want and what I need, and I ask them, what do they want and what do they need? If we just lay the cards out on the table, I found that the best business negotiations happen. It's the most mutually beneficial exchange that we could possibly have by telling the other person what I need and them telling me what they need. And being honest in the fact that if what I'm providing to them isn't a short-term fix, isn't, hey, this isn't going to fix what you need right now, but if you stick with me, we can get you there. People love authenticity. And so to me, that's the most powerful form of marketing ever is being authentic. And I think that's why it didn't work out for me being in the crypto space. That was just, it was a natural filtration process that the crypto space kicked me out because I didn't like my message wasn't received by taking a long-term approach to things. And so that's why Bitcoin, the gravity of Bitcoin drew me back in was because I like long-term, real, authentic truth. And, that's what brings me here today. Yeah.
You've you said a lot of really good things, so I feel bad for steering in this direction specifically. But you do infrared sauna only?
Yeah. No, so we do. It's the three spectrum infrared. So I don't know. Are you familiar with? It sounds like you're in like a little bit about infrared stuff.
Well, I'm just saying I've got a traditional sauna 10 meters that way, and the one where you pour the water on the stove and everything. Yeah. You don't do that one?
We don't do the stone one. We like it. Pretty much every gym that's in my area in California, they do the stone saunas, and so we actually just have a lot more people that gravitate towards the infrared. It tends to be a little bit quicker. The infrared light penetrates your body a little quicker, so you tend to get a little bit more bang for your buck in terms of a 15 or 30 minute treatment. And there's some other effects that come along with infrared light aside from just the heat benefits. So, now of course this is leading to people getting into cold plunges and all this kind of stuff. So we got all sorts of hippies.
Come to Finland sometime and we'll show you how it's done. But I know it sounds very good.
And I'm sorry about this next question, Brian, but I can't help myself. But did they tell you about the placebo effect in psychology class?
They sure did. We learned about that a lot. Yeah. You're not a holistic guy. We got a fiat pillar.
Look. The thing is, I'm skeptic to everything. So I don't believe in alternative medicine, and for the most part, I don't believe in traditional medicine either. So because I think it's all most of it is placebo.
Fair enough.
And to be fair, the placebo effect works, and the nocebo effect works. The mind can do wonderful things for the body. That's what I believe. Like, and if you set your mind to something, that's way more powerful than people believe. So that's my sort of holistic approach. And then the rest is skepticism.
Who knows? Maybe it's the placebo effect in order, but when you come out to Southern California for Pacific Bitcoin, I'm going to get you feeling good. So whether it's your mind playing tricks on you, or whether your back's feeling nice for the first time in a long time, I'm gonna infrared pill you.
Looking forward to that a lot. But I think Finland is a more natural environment for saunas than Southern California for sure.
You got it. We'll take that one. It's all good. We'll come to California and see you there, but then you have to come to Finland and have a nice proper Finnish sauna and
Finnish sauna. Yeah.
And in the Finnish sauna, you also have to get shit-faced, which is another health treatment that is traditionally Finnish, right?
Is that really?
Yeah.
Is that? I would never think to drink alcohol and then go on. To me, that sounds like that'd be awful. Is that really part of the tradition?
It's semi-mandatory, yeah. Yeah.
With a focus on mandatory.
Oh, yeah. Well, my wife gets into it too, so, you know. But hey, you've walked into a little den of us jokers picking nits here. But no, man, what you were saying, Brian, about kind of like what you do with the marketing kind of thing. Like I'm interested in how you take that into Bitcoin in general. Like Bitcoin, I think really does have a marketing problem generally. And what's your take on that? Because there's so many angles to it. It's like, does Bitcoin have a scaling problem? Does Bitcoin have a problem with being too toxic? All of these sorts of image things. What's your take on it? And how are you trying to address all of the issues within Bitcoin's image, I guess, so to say? Yeah, go.
That's a great question. I think it comes down to sales 101. And I think that a lot of Bitcoin purists hate saying, well, we don't need salespeople in Bitcoin. Well, everybody made fun of me the first day of the Miami conference because I was dressed up in a suit and Mateo told me I looked like I was an insurance salesman. So maybe I'm the guy that doesn't mind looking like the salesy person. But I think that 101 of sales is asking questions and figuring out where people are. So I've been able to do booths at freedom rallies here in Southern California. I mean, we live in California, so we have a lot of people that are tyranny minded. They love good old Gavin Newsom, but we have pockets of people that love liberty. And for some reason, those people just don't know about Bitcoin yet. It's crazy to me that I assume when I go to one of these liberty rallies and I set up a Bitcoin table and I'm just like, here's some information on Bitcoin. I figure people are going to come up and love me, but everybody comes up and they're like, this is the mark of the beast. This is the one world currency of revelation. I mean, it is crazy. And I'm a Christian guy. I can speak the language, but it's crazy to me that this is the reaction people have to it. Anyways, so it's the image that we have in the Bitcoin space. It changes from group to group. When I go and talk to these liberty minded people, and they want to know why Bitcoin has value. And so me explaining the Austrian economic answer of market value and marginal utility value, that just falls on deaf ears to them. And
subjective theory about
subjective. Yeah, there you go. Excuse me. So subjective value, it's like that just falls on deaf ears. And so I need to talk about immutability and censorship resistance, right? I immediately will go to, we have to talk about the Canadian trucker rally. Like they don't care about scarcity. Like that group doesn't care about scarcity. But when I'm talking to my stepfather, that's a gold bug, then I need to talk about scarcity, right? So I think I think Bitcoiners just need to be willing and ready to be flexible in tailoring what we say. There's so many components to Bitcoin that I think get lost on the general population. We geek out on it. We think that, man, there's so many things that Bitcoin solves. There's so many really interesting facets to it. The difficulty adjustment of Bitcoin mining is, wow, that's such a cool innovation that, like, if you study Bitcoin mining, it's fascinating. But my mom doesn't want to hear about that. And so how do I appeal to my mom? Or how do I appeal, again, back to talking to the altcoiners? Like, how do we appeal to the altcoin community when this 21-year-old kid got into Doge because he could buy 1 million Dogecoin for $12? Like, how do you talk to those people? And so I think being able to tailor a Bitcoin message for each of those people is really important. So that's kind of how I wrote the book. That's a Bitcoin evangelism is here's different, ways to sharpen your argument for the Dogecoin guy. And that's as easy as telling them about sats. I was pretty shocked at the Bitcoin Miami conference about how many crypto people came up and they said, oh, how much is your book? And I said, oh, 75,000 sats. And they go, what's a sat? And I said, oh, a sat is a piece of a Bitcoin. And here they are at the biggest Bitcoin conference in the world, and they haven't heard of a sat. And guess what? I asked this guy, I said, what do you do? He goes, I work for an exchange. And a guy that works for an exchange, he actually makes his living in this space somehow, didn't understand what a sat was. And so the person that wants a lot of something, sats appeal to them in a major way. So I think this fundamentally comes down to the argument of, I know there's Bitcoin purists that say we don't need those type of people in the space, right? We don't need the guy that just wants a lot of something. If he wants 1 million Doge, let him have his Doge and he can be on his merry way. And so I'm of the belief that I do want those people in the space. I want them to touch some Bitcoin. I want them to touch sats, because I think that that's a gateway drug into them fully understanding the rest of the space. And so I think having an argument or questions prepared for those type of people, a line of reasoning, a logos that appeals to those type of people, is really important. And that's the message of my book. And it breaks those different sections down based on different groups of people you might interact with.
You know what, Brian, I kind of want to back you up a little bit here on this one point too, because it's not true that someone can get into crypto and actually understand Bitcoin, because my own journey with it, I played around with Ethereum for a little bit in 2017 because it's what was going around my office. I don't know why my office thought Ethereum was cool, but whatever, like it's what I heard about. And it crashed and I forgot about it. And then crypto is going up back in 2021, whatever. So I check on my Coinbase account and oh my goodness, my $30 of Ethereum is a lot more money. And I start playing around with it and I get on like Reddit and a bunch of other places, not Twitter though. Twitter, that's probably good actually at that time. I would have got into crypto Twitter, not Bitcoin Twitter. But I got into Reddit and I went to do the cryptocurrency subreddit. And honestly, the only reason that I went into Bitcoin at all was because I kept on seeing people say, okay, you got to have a little bit of Bitcoin because that's kind of the safe thing. You got to have that in your portfolio, whatever. I did all the things that a new crypto person should do, have a balanced portfolio, whatever it is. And the thing about it was, I thought I was doing that in a good way. And I had no idea what Bitcoin was, any idea about it. And the thing was, of course, I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole properly. I found proper people that were talking about it in a good way. But it took that to get me from baseline crypto to Bitcoin. And I mean, now I'm a balls deep toxic maxi, like, don't get me wrong. But the thing here is that like, it really, you can be super ignorant about Bitcoin and still be into crypto otherwise. And even be into having some Bitcoin in your portfolio just because it's the so-called blue chip or something. So yeah, I think it is important to try and bridge that gap to the crypto piece.
Yeah. Well, just to clarify what I was saying before, I think the creators of the shitcoins all know about Bitcoin, not the people buying them. That's most people buying them have no clue. Like they wouldn't be buying them if they had. It's like socialists who understood economics wouldn't be socialists. It's about the same thing, right?
Good point.
You understood.
Knut, I have a question for you. I brought this up the other night and I think it's a fascinating thought experiment for me. It's like me trying to really learn. So if we go back to January of 2009, would you consider Bitcoin a shitcoin at that point? Was there certain markers or is there a certain point where Bitcoin maybe was a shitcoin and it no longer is? Or how would you define that?
Yeah. I wasn't aware of Bitcoin in 2009, so I have no like personal story with that. But when I discovered Bitcoin, I was skeptic, and then I took a course about digital currencies in the plural form, and I got to understand like the basics of the elliptic curve cryptography and all of this and the maths behind it. And I've studied quite a lot of maths in my life, so I understand stuff like that fairly fairly easily. What always puzzled me though was like if the thing is that if the value proposition has something to do with this thing being finite, how then can we create it? How could copies of it ever work then? Because all of it is a number on a computer. So making copies of that, it's just like you can make infinite copies. It's like the regression there. I never bought that narrative. So, but then again, I was still skeptic towards Bitcoin because to me, like I always thought either Bitcoin works or none of it works. So, and I'm sort of still there because there's a small chance that Bitcoin, for some odd reason that I can't foresee, will just break down and not function anymore. But if that happens, I'm still happy because I have this fantastic network of people, honest people around the world that I know people, the best people on every continent at this point. But so it was all worth it anyway. Having said that, though, the thing that really convinced me about Bitcoin being sufficiently decentralized to actually pull off rules without rulers was during when the SegWit 2x hard fork was denied. Because for those of you that don't know, there's quite a good book called The Block Size Wars about this. I do not agree with that description of events fully, but I say I agree with like 80% of the description of what happened in that book. The guy who wrote it is still sort of trying to keep this, that what we did might have been wrong and what the other side might have had some merit to it. I view it slightly differently because there was an upgrade to Bitcoin called segregated witness, which all the users wanted because that would enable the Lightning Network in the future and stuff like that. So everyone sort of wanted that, except for a few, very wealthy players who could make more money from mining if SegWit wasn't there. to give the short version, there was something called ASIC boost, which SegWit would sort of deny, and there's debates of whether that was ever used or not. And I'm not the most technical person, so I wouldn't want to go too deep into that. But then there was a big cabal of the biggest companies in Bitcoin at the time gathering in New York to form an agreement on the roadmap for the future, what to do. And they decided that we're first going to implement SegWit and then increase the block size by 100%. So the second hard fork was called, or SegWit itself was not a hard fork, it was a soft fork. But then there was a proposed hard fork called SegWit 2x, which would increase the block size, double the block size, because fees were getting high in 2017 also, similar to what's happening now. And it's kind of fascinating how the narratives from 2017 seem to repeat themselves now. This, documents on the blockchain and all this stuff, that was going on back then too, and it was proven wrong, and, discard that and move on. But anyway, the 2x hard fork never happened because the users didn't want it. All the nodes signaled, or a sufficient amount of nodes signaled that they didn't want this upgrade. So after a while, the miners who had they were sitting on 99% of the wealth in Bitcoin, at least the fiat wealth, and they still had to bow down to whatever the users wanted, because they knew if they wouldn't do what the node runners told them to do, they would have lost their business completely, because Bitcoin would have failed at that point. So the hard fork never happened, which to me was proof enough that the users were actually in control, or rather everyone in the network was in control, and it was resistant to change in that crucial way that was needed. Because what the 2x hard fork would have done is that it would have set a precedent for hard forks like that happening over and over again in the future. So then they could have just doubled the block size and doubled it and doubled it and doubled it, which in the long run leads to people not being able to afford to run their own nodes. And when people do not afford to run their own nodes because they need these giant hard drives, which are costly, then Bitcoin is not decentralized anymore, and then there a small elite forms that can make decisions for everyone else. So it becomes much more vulnerable to attacks. So that's the denial of SegWit 2x was when I discovered Bitcoins, because I think all of this is a personal journey. Hyper-Bitcoinization is a personal thing. The discovery of Bitcoin is a personal thing. It wasn't created by Satoshi. It emerged from the community that was a product of Satoshi's actions, but also of other people's actions. And the white paper is just a tiny part of Bitcoin's history and how it emerges from smaller parts into becoming this bigger thing. So that's the way I view it. And that's the story of how I got to a point in the rabbit hole where I couldn't climb up of it, out of it again. The SegWit 2x hard fork failing.
It's fascinating how something failing could be so compelling. But yeah, I agree that seemed like a pretty substantial moment in the history of Bitcoin. And yeah, probably if you had to point to one period of time that showed Bitcoin's resilience was that, because I think that it was really easy to gravitate towards the SegWit 2x for a lot of people, which ended up being Bitcoin Cash, because there are arguments that anybody that had a kind of a fiat mindset would have gravitated towards that, right? Faster transactions and, more profitability. And, all the arguments they were making were sounded very compelling if you had a short time horizon or a high time preference. The node operators through that process really kind of took the long view. And like you said, we're going to keep the block size smaller so that we can continue to run these nodes, so that people don't have to outsource these to Amazon Web Services or whatever. So,
yeah. I replied to a clip of Eric Weinstein talking about Bitcoin this morning, and how I disagreed with almost everything he said. Because I felt that I had to, because someone was wrong on the internet, So he said, first he said that you're all here because of a white paper. I mean, I'd love to have Eric Weinstein on the pod someday. I like the guy a lot, and this is nothing personal against him, but this is just a reply to his points, because I think I have a different perspective. He said that we're all here because of a white paper, which I don't think is true. Like, the white paper is only a tiny part of Bitcoin's history, as I said. And then he said, we need to stop pretending that Bitcoin is perfect. And what he misses there is that Bitcoin never needed to be perfect. It just needed to be good enough to last forever, which is one of my favorites, Tomer Strålite quotes. So that's the thing. You reach this point where it's good enough, and then that lasts forever. And that's the point. It doesn't change. Like, it ossifies. So, and then he said that we still need to innovate. Innovation is crucial to this surviving. And it's not. Lack of innovation is, in a way. Resistance to change is way more important than innovation. We can innovate on layers on top of it, and but we want the base layer to stay as static as absolutely possible. So, and then he says, in order for people to have to provide societal freedom and not only personal freedom, and I think that's oxymoronic, because I think society is made out of people, and personal freedom is like, you can't have societal freedoms without personal freedoms. It always starts with the individual. I'm an anarchist or a consensualist. So there's no societal freedom without individual freedoms first. Yeah. And then he says, claims that Bitcoin is, if people know you have Bitcoin, they can come home and do the $5 or $20 wrench attack and threaten you and take all your stuff. But what he misses there, this sounds like an attack on Eric, but it isn't. It's really just replying to these points, because I think there's a lot of confusion here. The thing is, you're being attacked right now with a very cheap wrench at all times, because someone is allowed to run a money printer. And further on top of that, you need to pay taxes, otherwise you go to jail. So this is already happening. Fiat has that problem. With Bitcoin makes violence way less profitable, because when you cannot know how much another person has, and you cannot take it by force very easily, because the person can give up a fraction of their Bitcoin and not tell you about the rest. The better choice for you as the attacker is to just provide something of value to the person and get something of value back. So it moves the Schelling point of violence in that sense. And fiat does not. Fiat does the opposite. It's extremely easy to take stuff from people in fiat, especially if they have credit cards and debit cards tracking every single payment they do. Then a centralized authority has all the information about all of your financial transactions. So that they can and are being violent to you and stealing your stuff all the time. So you're not living in peace. You're living in a perpetual war that the government wages against you. You're being violated against every single microsecond because someone has a money printer. That's the main reason. And that's the problem that Bitcoin solves. So just wanted to rant there for one.
Their violence doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to last forever, right?
Exactly.
And that's what they've done. They've figured out a form of violence, that's just perpetual and it's below the surface and it's constantly simmering.
And below the belt.
Right in the nads. To your point, I think this is one of the most compelling things that, I find that this is a more interesting talking point for the gold bug or the fiat minded person that maybe is a little bit wealthier. They said, well, $5 wrench attack. I like that you've added the inflation into the wrench attacks and now it's $20. They say, well, if somebody puts a gun to my head, they know that all of my Bitcoin could just be on, my seed signer somewhere. I said, I'll bring up the points like you said. Well, of course you need to have your dummy one, right? You need to have your one that has $1,000 worth of Bitcoin or what, it has 2 million Satoshis on it. You give that one over. So obviously there's things that you can put into your protection plan, but they need to understand that it doesn't make sense to rob somebody for Bitcoin in the same way that it would make sense if you have a safe in your house with $100,000 of fiat. That actually could be a very lucrative theft, right? They're actually incentivized to kill me because as soon as they pull the trigger on that gun, they have an unlimited amount of time to search through my property or search through my residence to find that safe that's under the floorboards. They will, given enough time, they will eventually find that safe and they'll be able to extract that value. But if they have a gun to my head and I never gave them my seed phrase, then they've automatically lost the ability to access my funds. So them pulling the trigger disqualifies them from being able to perform that theft in the same way that it actually frees them to roam my property to find my funds in a fiat sense or in a gold sense. If I have a stash of gold in my house, it's the same thing. And so Bitcoin has this built-in protection that as soon as you blow my brains out, my brains were the only thing that had access to those coins.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, all of the Bitcoins are in someone's head. It's all about keeping a secret. Like the seed phrase, if you broadcasted the seed phrase, put it on TV or at the billboard somewhere, the Bitcoin would disappear pretty quickly because someone would figure it out. But to even know that a seed phrase is a seed phrase, you can hide them in a poem, for instance, or like there's such a... We've just begun to scratch the surface of how to do Bitcoin security because there's so many ways of keeping a secret. And that's all it is. It's all about just keeping a secret. And you can keep one secret, you can keep many secrets, but at the end of the day, all Bitcoins reside within a person's head, or a couple of person's head, a couple of people's heads.
Right.
So that's all it is. And that's what makes it so much more resilient to violence than physical things, because physical things are physical. This is not physical. This is in your brain. It's a different thing. It's in the intellectual realm, not in the realm of physical violence.
Right. And everybody has intellect where not everybody has physical strength or physical means to protect themselves. So it's literally the most equalizing type of property that you can have because everybody has the ability to secure that. It's the only, I believe you've said this before, it's the only true property right that could ever exist because they can't be taken by physical force. And Luke, to your earlier question about marketing, I think that one of the things that I found was an early boost in the shot, boost in the arm of my book sales. It kind of got, when I was starting to do my book tour, people were fascinated by my book. They never heard my name before. And so, how am I going to sell a book to people if they don't know who I am or they don't know my background? So what I did was I actually hid a seed phrase in the early copies of my book. And I said that here, this is meant to be a lesson. There's 12 words hidden throughout the book. And the first person that finds it wins 5 million sats. And so I want people to understand that Bitcoin is about keeping a secret. You can even be kind of loose with that secret. I can try to give that secret out to the world, but unless you I promise you, those 12 words are in this book, but unless you know how to find them, it's still a secret. And so even by putting that out publicly, like you said, you could hide it in a poem. I hid it in my book. My daughter, she has this fun way of her seed phrase is written down. I won't tell you the exact methodology, of course, but she wrote a poem in crayon that she keeps in her safe, and will say every fifth word is her seed phrase, and it just looks like a child's poem written in crayon, but it's all of her, it's her 50,000 sats she owns or whatever it is, and it's her way of securing that. And it's so fun to talk to children about securing a seed phrase and just here, this is why it matters. It's a secret. This is something that you can keep, and you don't have to tell mom and dad about it. She came up with this own interesting way of securing her seed phrase that I wouldn't have thought of. And so she even told me, she goes, yeah, if somebody were to break into my safe, if my brother was to break into my safe, he would see this and he would just think it was a story that I wrote down, or it was a poem that I wrote down. He wouldn't even know that it was my seed phrase, those types of things. So it's very fascinating talking to children and see how when they start to grasp Bitcoin, what are the innovations in Bitcoin aren't, like you said, don't need to happen at the base layer. They need to happen at the intellectual layer. Our children are going to have more sophisticated ways. The social layer, right?
Yeah. So in a way, it's safer to keep the seed phrase out of the safe than in the safe, because if there's a safe, so that implies that there's something valuable in the safe. If it's just a poem in some notebook somewhere, then no one will ever know. Like they don't even know what they're looking for.
Yep.
So that's the thing. And I just realized I can make a lot of people do a lot of stupid stuff by claiming that there's 12 words hidden in each and every one of my books, and I stored about 100 Bitcoins in each.
Yeah.
There may or may not be. Like
just an asterisk.
There might be. Yeah.
There's not. Don't believe him.
So good one, Brian.
Sure.
Has anyone found? I guess no one has found them yet.
Somebody found it. It took about 6 months.
They did.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
all right.
I made it pretty complicated too. It was a woman from that I met at the Beef Initiative. She found it, and yeah, it was good. So
excellent. Did you hear about Michael Dunworth, the Peter Dunworth's brother? My Australian friends. Michael sent a Bitcoin to the future, to the year 2140. Time locked it, and the key is on the internet for everyone to see. So anyone who claims that in 2140 gets an entire Bitcoin worth like a couple of cities at that point.
That's amazing.
It is, right? And the most amazing part of it is that you can actually do that. You can just tell the network that this Bitcoin here, this here Bitcoin cannot be unlocked and sent to some other address until this block height.
It's amazing.
And then you protect them from even yourself. So
really good point. I don't trust my kids, but I'm going to pass this on to my grandkids. So I'm going to time
exactly. Yeah. And that's possible right now, and people ought to be doing it. But they are, and some are, but far too few.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, because I didn't know that. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
The show is also sponsored by BitcoinBook.shop, the Bitcoin-only bookstore by Consensus Network. Consensus specializes in translations of Bitcoin books and also publishes original titles in English and many other languages. Check out BitcoinBook.shop for all your Bitcoin book needs. Consensus is always looking for new contributors, whether you have a book you want to publish, you want to help translate books into your native language, or you have some other way you want to get involved. So if you want to help spread the Bitcoin message, reach out to Consensus Network by Twitter or email. Details are in the show notes.
What else do we have, Luke? It's a good time to wrap up, maybe?
Yeah, honestly, I think we've had a good combo. So yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, loved it.
Can you tell our listeners where to find you, and maybe any last words you have about Orange Pill app?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for having me on. This was just fun. Like, if there was no recording, I would just love to hang with you guys and chat. So, this is my pleasure. as far as reaching out to me, touch base with me on the Orange Pill app. I'm much more responsive on the Orange Pill app just because I know it's Bitcoiners. I try to get back to everybody on Twitter, so I'll do my best to get back to people on Twitter. And we love interacting with the social layer of Bitcoin. So that's really important. Yeah, there we go. Knut always doing a nice show for it. But I think it is important. I mean, that's my one last pitch to sign off with, is that we can all do something in Bitcoin today to help build, to lower our time preference. Your time preference will just naturally lower if you're trying to do something that's of material value. So whether that's hosting a meetup, whether that's going to Prague, whether that's doing something that's, being Consensus Network and selling books, like all of these things, it gets you focused on, okay, I can do something, because every human wants to do something here and now, right? Like we have a high time preference with our day. What's my checklist for today? That's fine. Like on productive things, we should have a high time preference, because if I need to make this hamburger, I can't wait forever for the hamburger to be made. So we need to build today. Those are the things we can have high time preference on. But what is the focus in the long term? Are we building something that's going to last till 2140 so I can unlock Michael Dunworth's Bitcoin, which I for sure am now going to strive to live to be 170 years old, just so that I can get access to a few cities worth of Bitcoin. But what we pitch with Orange Pill app is, if you don't have an idea for how you want to build in Bitcoin, help build the social layer. Help build the social layer of Bitcoin by plugging in. If you're the first Bitcoiner that you know of in your area, because you live in a remote area, then plug into the network and be that first node in that local community. Because what happens is every network needs to start with a node somewhere, and then the network will build out around you. So be willing to be that first person. Or if you're in an area that's high density already and you have 50 Bitcoiners that are on Orange Pill app near you, then start interacting with those people. Go grab coffee, create an event in your area and host a meetup. Or, there's Bitcoin games that you can play now. You can, buy one of these games and host a game night, or do, a Monopoly party or a poker party or whatever, and just get together with Bitcoiners and do those things. And so that's my pitch to people, is find a way to contribute to and build in Bitcoin today, because we'll have a brighter, oranger future tomorrow. Orange Pill app. If you go to theorangepillapp.com, you can sign up. You can pay in Bitcoin if you want. You can sign up through the app store and pay through the app store. If you prefer the fiat method, that's fine as well. Look forward to later this year. We'll have our orange pages, our merchant section of the Orange Pill app, where you can find local Bitcoin merchants, which we are very excited about as well, because I think that's going to contribute to hyper Bitcoinization, of being able to just pragmatically Orange Pill merchants. So, and as far as my book, it's available on Amazon. It's called Bitcoin Evangelism. Feel free to check it out. It's on Audible, all of those places as well. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Luke and Knut, you guys are awesome. And you guys are an inspiration. You guys are really pushing the intellectual layer of Bitcoin. And I always find it challenging and fun.
Thanks a lot. Everyone thinks they need to be a developer to contribute to Bitcoin, but the opposite is true. Everyone's a fucking developer in this space. We need the division of labor. We need all sorts of other skills. So, go make yourself useful. And thanks so much for coming on, Brian. Looking forward to the next Spaces and the next OPA meeting, whenever that is, after Prague, I think.
Yeah.
I hope.
Perfect. And we'll fill you guys in on this Orange Pilling Congress thing. We should have lots of fun content to provide. Hopefully some fun reactions from politicians on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Awesome.
All right. Take care, Brian.
What did you think of that episode with Brian? It was great to hear about all the work he's doing with Orange Pill app, and we're really excited about some of the new features they have rolling out soon. Check out Orange Pill app if you haven't already. It's available on iOS and Android. Let us know what you think of the episode. You can send us a boostagram on Fountain, leave us a comment on YouTube, or get in touch on Nostr or Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the episode and subscribe to the Consensus Network channel. Our show sponsors are Wasabi Wallet, Orange Pill app, and BitcoinBook.shop. Use code FOOTPRINT at BitcoinBook.shop for 10% off your purchase. That's all for now. See you next time, and thanks for listening.